Welcome to Season 3 of Five or Flop, a podcast for the best and worst historical fiction has to offer. I'm your host, Grace.
And I'm Erin, and each week we'll be reading a different historical fiction book to see if they're a five or a flop.
Our Season 3 theme is Back to School.
And this week we're reading Chains by Laurie Halse Anderson, which is my first reread of many rereads to come this season.
And this was a brand new one to me, but I have some author familiarity, so actually kind of the same setup that I had with Josefina.
Before we get into that, what is new with you this week? Because I have something very exciting new with me.
Let's go. I want to hear it.
After 3 months, my washer got fixed today.
Woo!
I thought I was going to have to cancel this recording session because the guy was over there fixing it. And I'm like, Grace, I cannot leave. This is way more important right now. And he fixed it. He's my hero. Our landlord spent probably not thousands, but probably at least like close to $1,000 of our rent money, like paying for us to do laundry delivery when it cost $400 to get it fixed.
I mean, 25% of your year, you did not have laundry in your apartment.
Yeah.
That's insane. I am so happy for you.
I almost started crying when I heard it go. I'm doing laundry tomorrow. I'm so excited. I've never been this excited to do laundry.
Oh my God, you just told me you took the day off tomorrow, and it's not because of that, but now I'm imagining so that it's just like you could sit in front of the washing machine, like watching it go while you do your laundry.
So I'm off because I have to go to doctor's appointments that I've just been putting off. Don't worry, nothing's wrong. I'm just pushing off all my appointments. But I would have pushed off my meetings tomorrow so I could do laundry.
Oh my God, 100%. I'm so happy for you.
Big day for the Santiago Aaron household. What is exciting with you now that I interrupted you to tell you what's exciting with me?
Well, nothing is more exciting than your washer being fixed.
That is true.
But really, this is exciting for both of us.
Yes.
I received a gift that is like because of you. So first of all, thank you.
She got a gift for my birthday. And that gift wasn't just hanging out with my cousin and my sister.
No, even though that was truly a present to me. But shout out to former pod guest Hannah and also Jen.
Future pod
guest Jen, who for Erin's birthday got her custom Five or Flop merch.
It's so incredible. And I swear to God, if we ever get more than 35 listeners, we will sell it.
We will sell the merch. But because they love me and they know that I love tote bags, they also got me a tote bag.
So they got me a tote bag, and then I got 3 Crudax sweatshirts for my birthday this year, which is amazing.
I thought you meant that they got you 3.
No,
and
they
I was
got
like,
me
why would they do
got
that?
me the logo on one. My other friends got me one that has a doggy and it says Flynn Social Club on it. And then Sarah got me an embroidered Kermit the Frog, It's Not Easy Being Green.
Oh.
And all I wear, like once it drops about, it's what, 75 out? Once it drops about 10 more degrees, all I wear is Crudax.
Well, I was going to say, during that work from home lifestyle, when it's cool outside, it's the season. I'm so glad you have those.
Me
and
too.
I'm so glad that I have a Five or Flop tote bag.
So if you keep promoting us to all of your friends who love historical fiction, maybe one day you too will have a Five or Flop tote bag.
So that's motivation for the listeners to share the pod.
Exactly.
Yes. Recently, my mother did tell me that one of her friends listens to almost every episode.
Wow.
So,
that's
yes.
more than my mom, who's behind by like a season at this point.
I don't know if I have ever called you by your first name to your face, but I'll just say, Chris, shout out. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
What else are you reading aside from pod books?
So I actually am kind of in the midst of a pod book right now, but once I finish it, I am about to start The Prestige.
That is going to be crazy.
Famous movie with, isn't Hugh Jackman in that movie?
King Hugh Jackman?
Is he in The Prestige?
Yes. It's Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale.
Well, famously, Hugh Jackman of Snowflower and the Secret fame. That was a lot of F's. there. So I've watched the movie. When I watched the movie, I do not remember what happened in it at all.
We watched it together. And
I asked too many questions and Grace got really mad at me.
Well, I won't say that our viewing experiences were different, but I will say that you and Santiago kept asking me questions, and I was very much like, I am watching the same movie as you. I don't know what's happening.
So I think I also fell asleep for part of it. I'm notorious for falling asleep during movies.
It's a confusing movie, and it's not a scary movie, but it is a tense movie. So I was under the impression that scary things could happen, and I'm very weenie-ish about that.
It's like unsettling.
Yes.
So I'm also watching The Leftovers, which is a show that was too unsettling for Grace. So it's not scary, but so I totally get it. But Kat of previous pod fame, Babel, She read the book and she said that the last 15 pages were the scariest thing she's ever read, and she had to turn the lights on and sit quietly for like an hour after it.
And the bar for a book being scary is high, because I can feel like I can take it.
I remember the ending from the movie. I'm like, yeah, it was creepy, but I don't remember being scared. And now the only thing Kat's seen of the movie is the last 5 minutes.
Yes, because she came in while we were watching it and tried to be like, is this The Prestige? And we were like, shh.
So she's now has to watch the movie. I have to read the book. I am excited for it, though.
All right.
What about you? What are you reading?
I, last week, talked about a lesbian novel that I read, and I have a different lesbian novel that I also just read. This one is a newer release. It was called Perfume and Pain by Anna Dorn, who I had never heard of before. But it was supposed to be like a send-up tribute to lesbian pulp fiction.
Okay.
From like the 50s, those like cheap books that were meant to be just like destroyed. And it was very campy, and I thought it would be fun. It was a little less fun than I thought.
Okay, it happens to the best of us.
It was still campy. So I got it from the library, and I had a good time.
Great, yeah. Actually, when I picked up the Prestige, I picked up a couple books from the library, and it was Santiago's first time going to the library in D.C.
I gave Aaron a look of shame on his behalf.
It's okay. He's come here, and he dropped me off to the library several times. But we went to the Shaw Library, which is famously not the best library in DC. Like, it's on the smaller side.
It doesn't have a ton of space, but it is a beautiful building.
It is. It's not to say it's like a shitty library. It just doesn't have the space that our recording studios at like the flagship library.
Well, I was going to say we also come to the giant one.
Yeah, so it's very different. But I like it. It's like a 5-minute walk from our house. So that was fun as well. I forgot the other books I picked up. One was a romance book.
Ooh. Well, we'll be hearing about them in future episodes, I presume.
Exactly.
So let's dive in to Chains for the week.
And I can start off with the synopsis. Dun, dun, dun. As the Revolutionary War begins, 13-year-old Isabel wages her own fight, ... for freedom.
Not the ... out loud.
Leave me alone. Promised freedom upon the death of their owner, she and her sister Ruth, in a cruel twist of fate, become the property of a malicious New York City couple, the Lockdons, who have no sympathy for the American Revolution, evil Brits, and even less for Ruth and Isabel, evil white people. When Isabel meets Curzon?
Either way.
When Isabel meets Curzon, a slave with ties to the Patriots, he encourages her to spy on her owners, who know details of British plans for invasion. She's reluctant at first, but when the unthinkable happens to Ruth, Isabel realizes her loyalty is available to the bitter, who can provide her with freedom.
Wow. So the first thing, I have seen the cover of this book before. I have not read it before. It wasn't until we had put it on the list and I read the back that I realized this is a novel about slavery in America set during the Revolutionary War, which is pretty unique, I think.
I think so, definitely. And also it being, if you've more children's fiction about slavery in America is set in the South.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I know that's something, like I said during Josephine, a lot of these books have like a history section at the end. And part of this was like a Q&A style. And it was like, were there slaves in the North? So yes. I do think it's an important thing for children to learn.
Yeah, so it's set not during the Civil War and not in the South. So that's very unique.
So about Laurie Halse Anderson, she obviously is she's a very well-known author who deals with a lot of very difficult subjects for young audiences. She's written her most famous, Speak, Chains, which this is the first in a trilogy.
Which I did not know.
Fever, 1793, and Winter Girls.
Mm-hmm.
She is super, super famous, I think, among our age group specifically, is when her books were very popular.
Mm-hmm. I think that's the Speak effect.
Yes. Her website is really bad. It's just like...
I saw that bullet point. It made me laugh.
No, if you go on, it's like, it's, quote, connected to her socials, and then it's just like, nothing to see here. And it's just like not... Like, you would think for a very famous, well-known author,
Come on, Laurie.
She won the 2023 Astrid Lindgren Memorial Award, which I don't really know what that is, but that was her most recent award noted on her website.
Okay. And I will say we have a copy of Chains right here because I always have our copies with us. And it has 2 medals on the front, one of them noting that it is a National Book Award finalist. And the other one is the Scott Odell Award for Historical Fiction.
Oh, okay.
I've not heard of that. And also I had to manipulate it very much to see what the words say under the light. But there you go.
Yes. So So in terms of familiarity, I have read this, and I read Fever 1793, which that I actually was an assigned reading group book for me.
Oh.
I don't remember what grade.
Interesting.
But this book, I read it, God, it had to have been like right when it was released, because I remember knowing it was a trilogy and being super excited for the second one, and it didn't come out for like another year or two, so I dropped this series.
Wow.
So I notably remember this book of being like, oh, damn, okay.
Wow. That is very weird, because also you have 4 books listed here, and I have read the 2 you haven't read.
Really?
Yes.
That's
so
funny.
I read Speak when it came out at the time. For those of you who don't know, Speak is not an autobiographical book, but based on experiences of her, of being a young girl who was assaulted at a party and who stops talking. And then I also read Winter Girls, which is excellent. And that is about 2 girls who are best friends who both have eating disorders, and one of them dies at the beginning. That's not a spoiler. So those are her like modern contemporary issue books. And this is the first time that I read Chains, and I did not know at all that it was a trilogy, even when I like started reading it.
Yeah, I remember my first time reading it back in like whatever grade it was. I remember thinking it was like a standalone, and then at the end is how it's. I actually think it's very cool how it's set up. It's set up like it looks like a runaway slave ad, and that's like the keep an eye out for.
Yeah,
and I'm like, I love when things are like thematically integrated into. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool.
So I was not familiar with this book, really, the content of it, and like I said, I didn't even know it was about the Revolutionary War until we picked it up. But I do think highly of Laurie Halse Anderson, so I did have optimistic feelings going into it about her ability to handle the topics.
And we're going to talk about this a bit more when we get to the history or talking about the book section. We are aware that Laurie Halse Anderson is a white woman writing from the point of view of a young Black slave girl. This is not something we're ignoring. We're going to discuss about it. And she actually has some posts on her really shitty website about it.
But the posts are good.
The posts are, yes. Yeah, they're
posts
well
are
written.
thoughtful.
The website is the shitty part.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's a good thing to talk about, and I think it's an important part of the narrative, and I'm excited to get into it.
Yes, but before we get there, our judgments come based on the book and characters within the book rather than any real historical figures, which we're getting into the territory. I think this season especially, we have a lot of
a bunch.
Side and background characters who are real than any real historical figures they may have been based on. So let's get into the book. Before I begin, I read one quote while doing the history research that this book should actually replace another book we are reading this series in schools for like the assigned fiction American Revolution. And that book is Johnny Tremain.
Spoiler.
Not a spoiler, it's on our story graph. I will not be sharing any thoughts on Mr. Johnny at this point in time, but I did think it was very interesting to note that this is kind of
similar time period,
and also just important to note that like a lot of people feel very strongly about this being integrated in like modern curriculum.
I actually had that thought. I was like, oh, I didn't realize that we had these 2 Revolution books so close together in the season.
But I think it's a good thing.
And I think so too, because we can more directly compare them once we have the Johnny Tremain episode.
Yeah, we almost could have done them in the same, but they're both a little long.
They're really disparate, yeah.
They're very different, and they're both a little too long to do that.
Yes, Johnny Tremain is slightly more for children. I think it falls between Chains, which is very much for like a top of the middle grade, bottom of the young adult audience.
Yeah.
And then between like something like Josefina, Johnny Tremain would be like kind of in the middle.
Yeah, I agree completely.
Yeah. But I did think of the 2 Revolution books, this is the one that I would be more likely to hand to a 4th grader that I know.
This was very engaging.
Yes. Sorry, go on.
The characters in this book I thought were very well-rounded characters.
I agree. I think that all of the praise that we have heaped on some central characters in the past, like I'm thinking Lakshmi, Violetta, where we were like, this is a really strong like pillar character for this book. I feel that way about Isabel.
Oh, yeah.
Isabel is a fantastic character.
She is so good.
And one of the things almost that surprised me, I wrote this down as a bullet point, so I'll just go ahead and get into it. It's the synopsis talks about Isabel, who is a young girl, and her sister, Ruth. And Ruth is 5 or 6. She's young. She doesn't talk very much. She's kind of selectively mute. and she has, I believe, epilepsy. She has seizures.
Some sort, yeah.
Yeah, they obviously don't like get into
there's no
modern medical terms. Yeah. But the way that Isabel describes her in the context of history is simple.
Yeah.
And at first I was kind of surprised realizing like, oh, Ruth is going to play kind of very little of an active role in the story. Mm-hmm. But I think Ruth is such a great utilitarian character because she provides Isabel with that sense of what you would say is self-preservation, but it's really preservation for her family unit. Yeah. So it's so many of her motivations, because otherwise you might think like, well, why doesn't she just spy on the British? Like, what does she have to lose? Like, but she has an anchor in her sister, even if the sister doesn't do anything herself.
So these two girls were promised freedom. They got taken advantage of, were not made free. And so the whole point is they have this really abusive Mrs. Lockton. Was that right? Lockton. And she eventually tells Isabel she sold Ruth down in like the Caribbean or something.
Yes, and to like work on sugarcane, which is really, really backbreaking and dangerous. Which obviously a young girl who is sick cannot do.
This is Ruth's motivation for, she's literally just working for whoever in the revolution is going to get her free.
And that is the most important thing that this book does and can do.
Yes.
Which is establishes that neither side of the revolution cares what happens to Black people.
Yes.
At the beginning, Curzon, who is this boy who is very embedded in, I think you find out later, he's a runaway. Mm-hmm. And he's very embedded in the Patriot movement.
Yes.
And he wants Isabel to spy on the British Lochtons. Family, yeah. Yes. And she says, if your Patriot side can get me and my sister back to Rhode Island, I will happily do that.
Yeah.
They renege on their promise. They don't care.
Yeah.
And then she hears, oh, any enslaved person who promises to fight for the British will free you.
Unless you ran away from a loyalist family, because they're going to give you right back.
Yep. And so she's like, I've tried to play both sides, and neither of them are going to give me anything.
Which, this is actually a really interesting point in history, and this is not quite related, but something I remember, remember when you learn a fact and it's like you were there, you remember it? When we were learning about the American Revolution in school, and they were like, yeah, honestly, for most of it, like, more people supported the British.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that can't be true. And I'm like, oh, that is true. It's like...
It's the status quo.
It's kind of like just seeing how present the loyalist ideology was in this book.
Mm-hmm. And it is, you get that right away.
Oh,
it's very early in the book where you're introduced to the Lochtons, and they are like trying to smuggle in money that they're giving to the Tories and like all of this stuff. There's like, this was absolutely insane to me. I'm sure it'll come up later because it is true, I think. But there's a point where she's listening in on the husband as he and his like business cronies start to organize a plot to assassinate George Washington.
Yeah, that was true. I didn't include that in my research because I know they talked about it in the Q&A section of this book.
So
but
you're just
that
like,
was true.
That was insane. It was like, how do I not know that there was a plot to assassinate George Washington? But yeah, like you get the sense of the goals of each side, but what you feel from being in Isabel's point of view is the callousness.
Yes.
The way that simply like no one cares. And you're even contrasted with, Isabel is working for the Lochtons who are very cruel. Mm-hmm. There's a scene we'll talk about later that really exemplifies the intensity of their cruelty. And then the Lochtons have this like elderly aunt who is this like nice
Lady Seymour?
Nice woman. Whatever.
Well, I don't even know if that was her name. I think it was.
It started with an S. And she is like old and about to die. And of course, Isabel has to take care of her. That's one of her jobs. And at the end of her life, this woman says to Isabel, like, I'm so sorry that I couldn't buy you and like save you from like this horrible house. Yeah. And Isabel is like, she wanted me to be so grateful about that. And she didn't even say like, I would buy you and free you. She was like, I'm sorry I didn't buy you and keep you to work for me.
Yeah.
That is like a very quiet scene in this book that has so many loud ones, but it resonated and came towards the end in a way where I was like, we're still even getting towards the end of this book coming up with ways to express the theme, which, again, very creative. And I think Laurie Halse Anderson is a talented author.
One note I had is that this pacing was incredibly solid for like a children's book. I feel like a lot of them like either move too fast or too slow. This was just every beat like hit for me where it needed to.
And I will say, I would have to go back and examine much closer the list of books that we've read. But any book that I read, like even not for the podcast, I can say like once I get into it a little bit, I can usually tell where it's going.
Yeah. Up
till the very end of this book. And you can attribute some of it to being like a trilogy and there's more plot to come. I had no idea where this was going. Even later, the Mrs. Lockton reveals that she didn't actually send Ruth to the Caribbean, and she's like with her family in South Carolina.
Yeah, she's like at another one of their plantations that they own or something.
Like I had no idea that was coming.
Oh yeah.
Like Curzon goes to jail, and I'm like, I had no idea that was going to come either. I knew something bad was going to happen to him. No offense, but
so at the end of the book, she does go back and save Curzon.
Yes.
Wondering your thoughts on her motivation for that, because
You think that she shouldn't have?
I mean,
or like you're like it was very nice of you to.
Yeah, I just didn't like. That's the place where it didn't feel totally in her character because her focus is saving her sister.
Well, here I do think I know why it is, and I think it's confusing because these two things are like pretty far apart. But I think there is a pretty clear reason. There is a point where after Ruth gets sold, this is information I'm giving to the audience, not to you, Erin, because you know, where Isabel tries to run away to go find her. And she is caught and brought back, put up in court, like in front of a judge. She is sentenced to be put in the stocks and branded. So this is the scene that I was talking about earlier that was so intense. The like poetry of this prose in this part is like so, like we were talking about unsettling. It was so unsettling. Where she's branded with the letter I for insolence and put in the stocks and like left there. Curzon comes and gets her out of the stocks.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, I can see that.
So then a ton more book passes.
Yeah, I wish there had been a bit more of a bridge between that.
But he's like, you know, dying in jail because they're not being fed. Basically the loyalists put all the patriots in this jail and they're like, it's quicker if they just die than we like pay to feed them or like use bullets to shoot them because we need those two things.
Essentially, half of them are like freezing to death, or starving to death.
Yeah. And so when Isabella's like, I'm making a run for it, I have fake papers. She's given herself a new name that she's chosen for herself. And she's like, I'm going across the river to New Jersey. And so she busts in with a wheelbarrow, takes Curzon out with her. And the end of the book is them on the shore in New Jersey. Yeah. And you don't know what's coming next, except the second book is called Forge. So you think, so you know where they're going.
Yes. And the second book is actually from his perspective, or at least a majority of it. I kind of looked up to see, like, plot-wise where everything was.
Well, I was going to say, when I was in my, like, I have no idea what's going to happen at the end of this book. Like, I was maybe 2/3 of the way through it. Then I looked it up on Storygraph just to see, like, not to Google what happens, but to just kind of get a sense of, like, I don't know. That's when I figured out there were 3 of them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then I was like, oh, well, it makes sense that we're not, like, wrapping up the story.
Spoilers, from what I have found online, they do get reunited with Ruth. And it is a children's book, so it's probably a happy ending.
Okay. I was just going to say, like, I don't know if I'll read the rest of these just because we have so much more to read for the season. But I was just like, oh, I hope so. I hope so.
Anything else you want to cover in this section? For me, these are not at all related to like the very eloquent things you have been saying. The fact that they use mouse fur for like a bushy eyebrow look, I didn't look that up and I should have.
Oh my God. No, that gave me a jump scare too. Like
from your mice infestation.
Oh my God, stop. When the fancy British lady is doing her makeup and it's just what we would consider normal, like old timey makeup, which is like she powdered her face white and she put rouge on and you're like, okay, cute. And then it's like, and then she clipped off a bit of mouse fur to put it on his fake eyebrows.
Wild.
Ugh.
And then the other thing I had that was, again, not related to anything else. Whenever I'm reading a book that's like set in New York a long time ago and they're still like, oh, we walked down Broadway. I'm like, what the fuck?
You're like, I could do that.
I'm like, obviously I know like Wall Street started as like a slave auction site, like all of that. But it's like the disconnect between all of that being like just casually like named in a book is always very weird to me.
No, I know. And like, God, you are right. All of the places were like real, real New York, real George Washington getting assassinated.
Yep.
All of that. Oof. I'm with you.
do you think it's a good time now? Well, I've kind of hit on what I want.
Let's have our author conversation.
Okay. So, yeah. So, Laurie Halse Anderson, and I didn't even put the article she wrote in here.
We'll link it in the description of the episode.
Yes.
It's a good piece to read to go with the book.
Can you give like a brief like overview of what we're talking about while I find the article?
Sure. Just the idea of, should people write from the perspective of a culture that's not theirs or a race that's not theirs? Should people specifically, should white people write about Black people in this case? Although I think this is a principle that's more generally applicable. And then also, if you do, what are your responsibilities, essentially, yes, undertaking that project? Basically,
what the resource that I'm pulling from and sharing a lot of Laurie Halse Anderson's thoughts and trying to attribute them to her and what her argument is that whose story are you allowed to tell? Whose story can you tell? And she's saying how she's written from male perspectives, from African American, from children of different countries, etc. And she's been criticized by different readers of saying, this is not your story to tell. Like, this is not yours to tell. And her whole mentality is that she wants to keep writing and talking about things that make readers uncomfortable, like evils of racism, things like that, especially to younger audiences, to get them more aware of the subject matter. And I think this argument spans her other books as well, like dealing with sexual assault, dealing with eating disorders, like writing about those uncomfortable subjects are so important for children to be exposed to in a safe way, mm-hmm, without like Googling on the depths of the internet and finding some real evil shit. So here is what she said about, I'm just going to pick one of these paragraphs to read because I think she has a couple lines that I like here.
Take your time and find the good stuff.
So here's one thing she says. We read to understand people whose lives are different than our own. Some writers feel called to write about people who are unlike themselves. You can do it, but you must do it with humility, respect, and a lot more research than you realize. And I think that's a good way to sum up her argument here, mm-hmm, is that she is writing about these subjects on purpose to educate people and to help people, help specifically young people learn about them. Mm-hmm. But is doing so with the care and research to realize that it's not about her. Mm-hmm. And I think you can have a lot of different opinions, and I think this is a very hard subject to deal with, of mm-hmm, whose stories can you tell, whose stories should you tell.
Exactly.
But I think, I don't know. I don't really know where I sit on this issue.
Mm-hmm. I definitely feel that artists have the right to make art that is unlike them, to write about people that aren't like them. In this instance, especially, I completely agree that you take on an extra responsibility. Yeah. Anyone can do it. Anyone can criticize you for doing it. There are people who think that you shouldn't do it at all, and that's your own personal opinion that I don't think is a wrongly held one necessarily. Like, if someone said, like, I don't want to read a book from the perspective of an enslaved African American by a white person, I would not be someone to tell them that they were wrong to do that. However, I think that there are people who are capable of doing it. I think there are people who do it who are not capable of it. And even in a way that's like slightly less high stakes than this, like there are a lot of male authors that I think like you shouldn't put women in your books. Like, you can keep doing your thing and you just shouldn't put women in your books. But again, you have the right to do whatever you want. So I think in this case, I do think it was done well. I think it was done with the care and the research. I think clearly just even the fact that this post exists and is very thoughtful demonstrates that I think Laurie Halse Anderson put a lot of the work into it.
Definitely not coming from the angle of I'm getting hate for no reason.
Exactly.
Like, it's not coming across like that.
No, she's like, this is a very careful thing to think about. And I thought she clearly thought a lot about it before she wrote the book.
Yes. And there's also another quote on here. Towards the end of this blog, she points to, she goes, there are two bloggers you simply must read if you're thinking about writing characters from non-white backgrounds. So this is kind of like a writing advice type of blog for context. Mm-hmm. One of them is from Debbie Reese, who is a former professor in American Indian Studies. She's enrolled at Nambe Pueblo, and she's getting her MLIS, which is what I have. But Debbie writes, though I'm certain no author ever sets out to deliberately misinterpret who we are in their writing, it happens, speaking specifically about Native American populations. It happens over and over again. Information is the only way to counter these misrepresentations.
And I have actually read Debbie Reese's blog before, and I have plans to bring it up on some episodes later in the season.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So that's a really good one. Yeah.
I love that. Another thing I wanted to bring up to kind of close out the thoughts that actually has me thinking more about this recently. Grace and I recently went to the National Book Festival.
Yes.
Put on by the Library of Congress. And we went to
I'm so glad you're bringing this up.
We went to the Sandra Cisneros session.
Yes.
Who's author of The House on Mongo Street.
And she was delightful.
She was great. I was really bummed because I couldn't get into the Eric Larson session because they put him in a teeny room for no sense. But actually, really glad I went to hers. And this topic came up because she had written like in a, what they called, like a book jacket review, like a blurb.
She had blurbed American Dirt.
Yes.
If you all recall from several years ago, that was a book written by a white woman about a Mexican woman crossing the border.
And it got a lot of like controversy because of that. And she got feedback, or she got pushback because she didn't rescind her blurb. But how she said it was that this author is going to reach audiences and open their eyes who would never have picked up a book by me.
She said, I went out of my way that year, because that book came out as Trump was being elected president, to blurb way more books than I normally do so that they would reach more eyes. Yeah.
So I think that's an interesting way to perceive it as well. And of course, we as white women cannot really speak to this top, like
we can share our opinions.
We can share our opinions, but this is not our conversation. This is not our identities people are writing about.
But I think also something to remember that I often forget is that this issue, as we learned from listening to Sandra Cisneros, is not a monolith. It's not all white people think that you can do this and all black people think that you can't, and all Hispanic people think that you can't. There's going to be a variety of opinions, and it will vary based on author, because every author has a different level of talent for writing and research.
So, and a willingness to put in that research and ability. But so I would say if you're curious to learn more, look up the arguments against Laurie Halse Anderson, look up the arguments in favor, and come to your own educated conclusion. Do not listen to what two podcasters are telling you to think.
We will put her blog post, like I said before, in the description for the episode, so you can go click on it and read it yourself. And that is a great segue into the historical accuracy section, and then we'll rate her and we'll get out of here.
Okay, so jumping into our historical accuracy section, I took it back to school, like the theme says, and used SparkNotes this week.
Oh my gosh.
So some of the characters and most of events are based on real figures and events. So you have Washington, his assassination attempt, Hinckley, Matthews, the toppling of the statue of the king.
Yes, that was crazy.
Yeah, the Great Fire, and then the Queen's birthday ball. Those were all real. A lot of this was also touched on in the Q&A section in the back, so I might be glossing over a little bit of that as well.
Also, I want to add, in the book, when the fire happened, that was so random.
That felt like out of nowhere.
Yeah, well, because they still...
It's like the Twister when it came and hit.
Well, I was just going to say, they still don't know if the fire was, like, lit on purpose by, like, a patriot, or if it was just, like, an accident, because back then, like, buildings just caught on fire and burned down whole cities. But it was exactly like the scene in Twisters when the Twister goes through the power plant and it turns into a fire twister.
Exactly.
But it was so random. You were just in the middle of the book, like... And then the whole city burned down, and you're like, wow.
So, and I guess going back to our author for a minute, this, like, I was like, when I read this, I was like, what the actual fuck? So she was inspired to write this book when she was, it might have been when she was researching for Fever 1793, I'm not sure. But at some point when she was doing some research, she was inspired to write this by not knowing that Benjamin Franklin had slaves.
I'm going to be real. I didn't know Ben Franklin had slaves.
No, but she said, she's like, well, I knew, like, the Founding Fathers, but that one really stuck out to me. And I was like, that's weird. I don't know. It's just, because he wasn't in the book, maybe that's why I was like,
oh, that's like how, like, that's the connection that, like, sent her down the rabbit hole, but that, like, thing didn't make it into the book.
Yeah, so I did find that very interesting. But that was how it came about, was that she was, doing research for other books, other material, and kind of went down this rabbit hole.
Okay.
And then about the British. So the British did offer freedom for slaves who right away joined them, as we discussed, except loyalists would get their slaves back.
Boo.
However, the British, when they left, did take many slaves with them and freed them in Nova Scotia.
Oh.
So they did free, like, a lot of enslaved people. Okay. Which is better than the Patriots.
And Nova Scotia is lovely.
Yeah. And slaves vastly more supported the Loyalists than they did the Patriots. And it was very much like what we were talking about with Isabel. Like, you kind of have to hedge your bets and, hope for the best.
Well, I mean, and, slavery was ended in Britain way before it was in America.
Yeah.
So...
And something that I found interesting in the Q&A section in the back, they were like, well, who were the good guys then? And she was like, well,
nobody.
No one was good. Like, they were all, and because especially in American curriculum, you're like, oh, the Patriots fought for everyone's rights. And it's like, no, they didn't.
No, just their own.
So this book offers a great insight into that avenue of they were all kind of bad. None of them were good. That's
why we say the importance of perspective.
Exactly. Very important.
Yeah. Because even though you might know all these things, it helps you to have an emotional narrative to put the pieces together.
Especially as a young reader.
Or
I guess this is kind of like middle grade juvenile fiction. I feel like that's when a lot of people fall out of reading.
Mm-hmm.
And books like this can pull you back in.
Keep you in. All right. Let's hop over to our calculator.
All right. So as you know from last week, we did change up our categories a bit to reflect the age and material we're reading this season. So our 5 categories are historical accuracy, theme, characters, stories, and vibes. And I guess I will go first this time.
All right.
Historical accuracy, I'll give it a 5. I felt comfortable with things. I thought she portrayed difficult subject matters well.
Mm-hmm.
And I love a book when real historical figures are just kind of sprinkled in the background. It's actually something I really liked about John D. Tremaine as well.
Okay.
Theme, I'm going to give it a 4. I thought it was pretty strong overall. Could have been a bit stronger. I didn't have that. I think the thread of the theme had a bit more directions it sprung off in.
Okay.
And I think I would need to read the other books
to feel satisfied.
Yes.
Okay.
Characters, I'm giving it a 5. I really enjoyed the characters, even the characters who were blatantly evil. I enjoyed having them in the novel and reading about them as characters, not as people.
Yeah. And like we said before, I said the sister was so utilitarian as a character. Every character had their clear purpose in the story, which I really enjoy when people are not superfluous.
Yep. Story, I'm going to give it a 4. It really did keep me twisting and turning until the end. However, I do feel for a fair judgment of that, I would have to read the other books. And then vibes, a 4 as well. Why not? So that's a 4.4. I'm going to give it a I guess I'm going to go a 5. Is that 2 5s in a row? That feels heavy for 2. I don't know. I'll give it a 5.
I don't think there's a problem with having 2 5s in a row.
You know me, I love a 5.
We love a 5
I know
here.
I have some very much not 5s this season, so
it's okay to hand them out like candy now.
Exactly.
All right. So for historical accuracy, I'm going to give it a 4. That's just how I feel about it. I've done my spiel a million times. Theme, I'm going to go 5.
Okay.
I think that the point of view is really unique and strong and important. That idea of who is serving the African Americans, nobody. I think that's a really important theme to address, and I think it was done very well. I'm going to agree with you. Characters 5.
Is Isabel the new Lakshmi?
Perhaps for our season, she might be. Also, we talked about Lakshmi so long ago. We're going to have to stop bringing her up eventually.
That would mean we have to phase out Hamnet, and I simply will not.
Okay, fair.
I like the idea of our callbacks becoming more and more as we're presumably getting new listeners who might not have heard it. I like that it's just going to get more and more no sense.
Yeah, and in season 5 of the podcast, people will turn it on who have never listened to it before, and they're like, time for the segment where we decide who Hugh Jackman is going to be. All right, story 4, same reasons as you. Vibes, I'm going to 5. I'm going to 5 the vibes, yeah. So that's a 4.6. I rated this a 4.5 on Storygraph, and I think I'm going to go with you and give it a 5.
Wow, you rated that high. Let me see what I did on Storygraph. It's under all my Josefina books. I rated it a 4.
So there we are.
Wow. All right. That was a good one.
So next week's book is not Johnny Tremaine. And in fact, next week's book is next week's books. There are 2.
And we are reading, well, before I say what we're reading, it's a fun little callback of what we talked about last season where we had to trim down our book list because there were simply too many World War II books.
This is why we did not read Molly for American
Girl.
Girl.
We also came across many World War II books, so we decided to put 2 in the episode together, and we will discuss why we made that choice next week. But what are we reading?
We're reading Number the Stars by Lois Lowry and The Upstairs Room by Joanna Rice.
Yes. And these are both rereads for me. I think one was a reread for you.
One of them I had never heard of before. One of them was a DNF. Anyway, we will welcome you back next week for those 2 books. But in the meantime, you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok at 5orflop_pod.
You can also subscribe to our Storygraph reading challenge for season 3 and come read all 40 books with us. Don't worry, it's not as daunting as it sounds, and it will actually help you meet your end of year reading goals because they're so short. If you have any books for future seasons you want to recommend, we have a recommendation form in our bio, or you could always hit us up via email, 5orfloppodcast@gmail.com.
And in the meantime, happy reading.
Bye.